All right, hello everybody. Graz here with the Graz World of Sports Gaming, and we're on Action PC Hockey. We are going to do the NHL playoffs for the 1970-71 season. I've got it written down here. The top 4 teams in each division will play in the playoffs. So let's get started. All right, the playoff bracket. Okay, we have Boston is the number 1 seed in this side, followed by Montreal, New York Rangers, and Toronto. And then on the other side, we have the Blackhawks, Chicago, Pittsburgh, St. Louis, and Minnesota. Minnesota made it in over, I can't remember who it was. Let's go look, shall we? Minnesota made it in over LA due to tiebreaker. They went 3-0-3 against them in the season. So that's what happened there. All right. These are best of 7s, I believe. Let me just double check that. Yep, these are all best of 7s. Okay. Set the pairings. It's not going to be like it was in real life, where the number 1 seed on this conference played the number 4 seed on this conference. You can't do that in the game engine. So it's just going to be straight 1 through 4. So here we go. We're going to do this. In real life, Montreal Canadiens beat the Chicago Blackhawks in 7 games for the Stanley Cup. So let's see what happens here. We'll start at the top. Toronto and Boston. All right. Toronto beats Boston 2 goals to none. Okay. Who shot the shutout for the goalie? The goalies. Plant. Okay. No, we want this right here. Okay, so Toronto has a 1-game lead over the number 1 seed Boston. Rangers and Canadiens. It's annoying. Canadiens win 2 goals to 1. No fighting. Okay. So the Canadiens are up 1 game to nothing. Okay. Minnesota and Chicago. Chicago beats Minnesota 4-3 in game 1. Bobby Hull with 2 goals. Not surprising there. He's one of the studs of this season. Phil Esposito for Boston was one of the other ones. And Bobby Orr. Okay. St. Louis and Pittsburgh. Hope it doesn't ask me that every single time. St. Louis beats Pittsburgh 3 goals to 2 to take a 1-game lead. Nobody gets a 2. Okay. So now we're moving on to game 2 for all of these. Pittsburgh and St. Louis. We'll start there. Pittsburgh beats St. Louis 3-2. Series is tied at 1. No fighting. Morrison has 2 goals overall. All right, so that series is tied 1 game apiece. Chicago and Minnesota. Chicago wins 3 goals to 1 and leads 2-0 for games. Okay, Bobby Hull has 3 assists so far. Wow. Okay, so they're up 2 games to nothing. Montreal Canadiens and the New York Rangers. Here we go. Rangers win 4-1. We'll take that. No fighting. Hadfield with 2 goals. Balin with 2 goals. Okay. And that series is tied 1 game apiece. Toronto and Boston. Boston 5-2 wins the game. Esposito with his first goal of the playoffs, or with a goal, Ellis from Toronto with his second and third. Oh, and Orr also has 2 assists. So those 2 guys, obviously. All right, so 3 series are tied 1 game apiece, and then the Blackhawks are up 2 games to none. Let's play game 3. Toronto wins 3-1. They're up 2 games to 1. They're doing a good job of keeping Bobby Orr and Phil Esposito in check for the time being. So we will see if that continues. They're up 2 games to 1 though. This is a Boston team that only lost like 3 games in my season. Like, let me show you. This Boston team was 65-3-10. I mean, just unstoppable. So they've already lost 2 games in the playoffs. That's almost more than they lost all season. Okay, Rangers in Montreal. Canadiens win 3-2 and lead the series 2-1. Still no fighting. That's fine. Balin hits his 3rd goal, but you know, Bellevue, that dude's been all over my stats in these early NHL seasons. Okay, Chicago, Minnesota. Blackhawks are up 3 games to none. They win 5-2. This is going to be the team, I think. Still no fighting, but whoa, 5 goals. So now the Blackhawks are up 3 games to none. St. Louis and Pittsburgh. The Blues win 3-0. They're up 2 games to 1, and their goalie was Wakely. Shot the shutout, I guess. So now Pittsburgh is down 2 games to 1 to St. Louis, and we'll play game 4. Uh-oh. St. Louis beats Pittsburgh again and leads the series 3-1. Pittsburgh hasn't scored in 2 games. Wakely with his 2nd consecutive shutout. Look out. Okay, so St. Louis is up 3 games to 1. Interesting. The Blackhawks sweep Minnesota 4 games to none by scoring 7 goals. Any fights there? No fights. Let's see. Dennis Hull up to 3 goals. Wow. Harvey. Well, Minnesota really doesn't matter anymore now, do they? Wow. Chicago is in the next round. Waiting. Canadiens and Rangers. Canadiens win 3-2. They now they lead this series 3 games to 1. Fighting. Oh, we've got fighting. We've got fights. Lots and lots of fights. Okay. Let's see. Lemaire. I'm looking for a Gordie Howe hat trick. Roberto Harper. Lapointe. No. Sather, McGregor. Stewart, Park, Nielsen. Nope. No Gordie Howe, but Montreal is up 3 games to 1. Can Toronto continue their improbable run? They do. They're up 3 games to 1 over the Boston Bruins. Look out. I don't see any injuries. I also don't see Esposito. Oh, there he is. He played 26 minutes and didn't do anything. So, okay. Let's play game 5. Toronto's up 3 games to 1. Can they pull off the 4-over-1 upset? Boston forces another game. Or with 2 goals, including the game winner in overtime, unassisted. That's the way to do it, Bobby. I think that's Bobby, yeah. Okay, so that's... Toronto still leads that series 3-2, but now, the Canadiens, can they eliminate the Rangers? The Rangers force another game with a 3-1 win. Wow, Balin has 5 goals so far in the playoffs. Okay, now St. Louis and Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh also forces Game 6. That's 3 straight series where they, that's a cat sneezing or gagging or whatever it is. So we have another Game 6. So we have 3 Game 6s coming. They're great because, cats are awesome because they eat their own fur and then they gag on it. Okay, St. Louis and Pittsburgh, Game 6. St. Louis eliminates Pittsburgh 6-2. Barclay Plager with 2 goals and an assist. Look out. All right, well, there we go. So now St. Louis will be at Chicago for the semis there. Montreal and the Rangers. The Rangers force Game 7. Look out, a Game 7. I love it. Hadfield with 2 goals. Okay. No fighting, but Balin scores his 6th. He's having a fun time. Scoring at will. So that'll be a Game 7. Can Toronto eliminate the number one seed Boston? Toronto eliminates Boston. So the 65-win Bruins are gone. Esposito never really got moving or had 6 assists, but Toronto does it. The team-wide attack. Okay, here we go. Game 7. New York, Montreal. And New York wins. They eliminate Montreal. I'm shocked at what just occurred. That means that the top 4 teams are gone. Boston, Montreal, Chicago, and Pittsburgh. All 4 series were upsets. No, I'm sorry. Chicago's still going. My bad. I apologize for that. Chicago is probably the team that's going to hold on here. We'll see. Who did they play in real life? Montreal, who just lost. So there we go. Toronto and New York in the next round. The Rangers win Game 1, 3-2. Okay, no fighting. They come back. They were down 2-0 and came back to win. So the Rangers are up 1-0. St. Louis and Chicago. The Blackhawks have not lost a game in the playoffs. They win 3-2. Bobby Hull and Dennis Hull both score. Okay. The Chicago are 5-0 in the playoffs. Wow. Okay, game 2 of this series. Oh, St. Louis. I talked it up too much. St. Louis wins. Series is tied at 1. But the Hull, they must be brothers, have 9 goals between them. And it looks like 6 assists between them. But St. Louis, St. Marcel, whatever his name is, has 2 goals. Sutherland hits the game winner. Okay, they're up. That series is tied 1-1. Rangers and Maple Leafs. Rangers win 3-1. They're up 2-0. Nevin with 2 goals. Okay. Moving on to Game 3 for the 2 series. The Maple Leafs with a shutout, 3-1. Henderson with 2 goals. Who's the goalie that did it? Plant. All right. So that series is 2-1 Rangers. Which team? St. Louis beats the Blackhawks. They are up 2-1. Wow. Bordelot and Sutherland again doing their thing. Bobby Hull doing his thing, obviously. Goals and stuff. I'm not the best announcer, but hey, whatever. Okay, so the St. Louis Blues are leading the Blackhawks 2-1. Going to Game 4. Blackhawks tie it up at 2 with a 3-2 victory. Dennis Hull with a goal. Okay, no fights. So we're not getting any Gordie Howe hat tricks or regular hat tricks for that matter. Haven't had one I don't think in the playoffs here. Rangers in Toronto. Toronto wins 3-1. They are up. No, that series is now tied at 2. All right, lots of penalties. No fights. Ellis with his 5th. Spencer gets his first goal. All right, so both series are tied 2-2. Playing the game fives. Sorry, Rangers win game 5, 5-2. They're up 3-2. Balin with his 7th goal. Rattel with 7 assists. Alrighty, so Rangers are 1 win away from the Stanley Cup Finals. St. Louis and Chicago. Blackhawks win 4-2. They're up 3-2 now. Dennis Hull hits his 7th. That's him and Bobby are a tough combo here. All right, so we're going to game 6. Chicago and New York are 1 win away from meeting each other in the finals. Game 6. The Blues force game 7. They win 3-2. Dennis Hull with his 8th goal and 3rd assist, but Plager with his 9th assist. Sutherland with his 6th goal. This is going 7. The Blues and the Blackhawks. If I've got any team names wrong, just let me know. Rangers and the Maple Leafs. And the Rangers are in the Stanley Cup Finals. They win 3-1, and that means they win the series 4-2. Balin with another goal. His 8th. That dude. Yeah. Okay, so the Rangers are in the Stanley Cup Finals. And here we go to Game 7 between the Blues and the Blackhawks. And the Blackhawks win 6-4. A shootout. Bobby Hull has 2 goals. Campbell has two. Was there any fights? No. So, okay, we've got Chicago and New York. All right, we have to swap the home ice advantage because Chicago is can we do that? Okay, Chicago's the higher seed. All right, best of 7, Stanley Cup Finals. Rangers, Blackhawks. Blackhawks win game 1, 4-2. Martin with 2 goals, Mikita with a goal. Balin with his 9th for the Rangers. Kazuk has 4 goals and 8 assists for the Rangers. But the Blackhawks are up 1-0. Okay, game 2. Rangers battle back in a shootout, 6-5. Series tied at 1. Bobby Hull has 2 goals. Dennis Hull with his 9th. Balin has 2 goals. He has 11 now. Yeah. It's the Hull brothers versus Balin. Let's see. So the finals are tied 1 game apiece. Here we go. Game 3. Rangers win 3-1. Taking a lead. Balin with his 12th. Kazuk with his 10th assist. Balin even gets 2 minutes for cross-checking. All right, so the Rangers are up 2-1. Here we go to game 4. The Blackhawks dominate game 4, 5-0 to tie it up. Martin with 2 goals, Mackey with 2 goals, Bobby Hull with his 10th and 2 assists. Yeah. And Esposito for the Blackhawks throws a shutout or whatever. All right, so the Stanley Cup Finals are tied at 2. Now it's a best of 3 pretty much. Game 5. The Rangers win 4-3, making them 1 win away from winning the cup. Balin with 2 more goals and 2 assists. Kazuk with 2 assists and 2 goals. Bobby Hull with an assist. These guys are just out there. Man, this is fun. All right, game 6. Blackhawks lose. Nope, the Blackhawks force game 7. So we will have a game 7. And wow, Balin and Hull neither of the Hulls scored, but they did get involved in some assisting. So we're going to game 7. 3-3. Here we go, game 7. The Blackhawks win the Stanley Cup, 4-1. Bobby Hull scores the final goal of the season. Dennis Hull scores the game championship winner. So there you go. The Blackhawks are the champs. All right. Let's see who... I mean, I'm guessing it's Bobby Hull is the MVP. The top goalie, they're giving it to Ed Jacquarden for the Rangers, even though Esposito won more games, lost less, and won the title and had a shutout. But Bobby Hull runs away with the MVP, so he is the Stanley Cup Finals MVP. So there you go. The Blackhawks win the World Series, win the Stanley Cup for me, and I will be back soon with something else. Thanks for watching. I've been Graz. This is the Graz World of Sports Gaming, and this was Action PC Hockey.